Out in the waters of the East China Sea, not far from the coast of Nagasaki, lies a small island that looks less like a tropical paradise and more like a ghostly fortress abandoned by time. At first glance, the island appears to be a massive block of concrete rising from the sea. Dark buildings crowd together so tightly that from a distance the island represents a giant battleship drifting silently on the horizon. This eerie place is known as the Hashima Island, but many people know it by another name, Wunkanchima, which means Battleship Island in Japanese. Why would such a tiny island earn such a dramatic nickname? And perhaps more importantly, why was it suddenly abandoned? Decades ago, this island was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Thousands of people lived and worked there, surrounded by towering apartment blocks, schools, shops, and even more movie theaters, all built on a narrow strip of island, barely larger than a city block. Life on island was harsh but vibrant. Families lived their daily life while deep beneath their feet, miners descended into the dark tunnels, caged far below the ocean floor. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. In the 1970s, the coal that once made the island valuable was no longer needed. The mines shut down, the workers left, and the entire city was abandoned. Today, Hashima Island stands silent and empty. Crumbling concrete buildings stare out across the sea. Broken windows and collapsing walls reveal the staircases that lead nowhere. What remains is a hunting time capsule, a entire city frozen in place, slowly being reclaimed by wind, salt, and time. But the island story holds more than just abandoned buildings. It carries echoes of industrial ambitions, human resilience, and painful chapters of history that still raise questions today. What was life really like on this isolated island fortress? And why did so many people once live here? And what secrets remain hidden within the ruins of this forgotten city in the sea? Our planet is covered by vast oceans and scattered across these waters are thousands of islands, some large and well known, others so remote that few people have ever seen them. While many islands are famous for their beautiful beaches and tropical landscapes, others are far more unusual. Some islands are shaped by beautiful, powerful volcanic eruptions rising dramatically from the sea. Others contain strange ecosystems where the rare plants and animals have evolved in isolation for thousands of years. There are also islands that hold deep historical mysteries, places where ancient ruins, abandoned cities, and its unexplained events continue to puzzle the historians and scientists. These strange islands remind us that even in the modern world, Earth still holds many fascinating secrets. Across the globe, there are islands with the landscapes so unusual they almost seem like scenes from another planet. Some are covered in the towering rock formations, others hide underground caves, volcanic craters, or dangerous coastlines shaped by the relentless waves and storms. Many islands also developed unique ecosystems because of their isolation. When animals and plants evolve without the outside contact, they sometimes develop the extraordinary characteristics that cannot be found anywhere else on Earth. But not all the mysterious islands are defined by nature alone. Some of the most intriguing islands are connected to the human history. Throughout the centuries, people have traveled across the oceans to settle remote lands, build communities, and create entire cultures far away from the rest of the world. In certain cases, the communities thrive for generations before suddenly disappearing, leaving there behind empty buildings, ruins, artifacts that tell only part of their story. One such place is Hashima Island, a small island located in the East China Sea near the Japanese city of Nagasaki. Unlike many mysterious islands known for wildlife or ancient rules, Hashima Island became famous for something very different, an entire industrial city built on a tiny piece of land in the middle of ocean. For decades, thousands of people lived and worked on this island, surrounded by tall concrete buildings that rose above the sea like a fortress. Beneath the island, miners worked in the tunnels extending deep below the ocean floor, extracting the coal that powered Japan's rapid industrial growth. At its peak, Hashima was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Yet today, island stand completely abandoned. The apartment buildings remain, the streets still exist, and many rooms look as they their residents simply walked away and never returned. Wind moves through the broken windows, plants grow through the cracked concrete, and the sea slowly erodes the edges of the island. Because of its haunting appearance, Hashima Island is sometimes called the Ghost Island, but beyond the empty buildings like a beautiful, powerful story about the human ambition, industrial progress, and the fragile nature of the communities built around a single resort. As we explore the history of this strange island, we begin to understand that some of the most mysterious places are on Earth are not only shaped by nature but also by the rise and fall of human civilizations. To understand the story of Hashima Island, it helps to first picture where the unusual places on the map. Unlike many mysterious islands hidden deep within the remote oceans, Hashima Island is located relatively close to a major coastline. The island lies in the waters of the East China Sea, just off the southwestern coast of Japan. More specifically, it is positioned near the historic port city of Nagasaki, which has long served as an important gateway between Japan and outside world. From Nagasaki, the island is only about 15 kilometers, roughly 9 miles away. On a clear day, boats traveling on from the city can reach the island in less than an hour. Despite this short distance, the island feels strangely separated from the mainland. Rising softly from the sea, its dark concrete buildings form a dense silhouette against the horizon, giving it the appearance of a massive floating fortress. This unusual shape is one of the reasons the island earned its famous nickname Gunkantima, which means Battleship Island. When viewed from a distance, a tiny packed buildings and protective sea walls represent the outline of a giant warship sailing across the ocean. Geographically, Hashima Island is extremely small. The island measures only about 480 meters long and roughly 160 meters wide. In total, it covers an area of just over 6 hectares, about the size of a few city blocks. Yet within this tiny space, thousands of people once lived. Because the island was so small, almost every available area had to be carefully used. Buildings were constructed close together, forming the narrow pathways between the apartment blocks, schools, and shops. Over time, the island became a dense urban environment, rising directly from the ocean. Unlike tropical islands with beaches and palm trees, the Hashima Island West has a different landscape. The island's surface is almost entirely covered by concrete structures and protective walls built to defend against the powerful waves from the surrounding sea. Natural soil and vegetation are extremely limited, and most of the island's original rock formation were altered by decades of construction. Historically, the island's geographically importance came from what lay beneath it. Deep below the sea path surrounding the island was rich deposits of coal. These deposits formed millions of years ago as ancient plant material was buried under the layers of sediment and gradually transformed by heat and pressure. By the late 19th century, companies began building mining factories on Hashima Island to access these underwater coal seams. The mine eventually extended far below the ocean floor, creating a vast network of tunnels beneath the island. Because of these coal reserves, the island became an important center of industrial activity during the Japan's rapid modernization. However, the island location also made life there challenging. The surrounding waters of East China Sea are known for strong winds and powerful storms, especially during the typhoon season. To protect their community, engineers constructed large concrete seawalls around the island's perimeter. These barriers helped prevent the waves from flooding the living area and allow buildings to be constructed closer to the shoreline. Even with these protections, the island remained exposed to the harsh forces of the sea. Today, without the constant maintenance, wind, salt water, and storms have slowly begun eroding many of the island's structures. From above, Hashima Island appear like a solid block of gray buildings surrounded by the deep blue water, a striking contrast between the human construction and the vast value natural environment around it. Its location near the Nagasaki makes it accessible enough for visitors and researchers, yet its abandoned state gives it an atmosphere that feels strangely isolated. Standing alone in the East Chinese Sea, the island remains a powerful reminder of a time when the industry, ambition, and survival once filled every corner of this tiny piece of land. At first glance, Hashima Island appears unlike almost any other islands on the earth. Most islands are known for natural beauty, palm trees, sandy beaches, coral reefs, and tropical forests, but Hashima tells a completely different story. Instead of lush vegetation or wildlife, the island is dominated by the rows of abandoned concrete buildings, narrow corridors, and crumbling staircases rising from the water of East China Sea. The islands look more like the walls of a city than a natural island. But this unique appearance is one of the reasons it gained the nickname Gunkantima or Battleship Island. When viewed from a distance, the dense cluster of buildings surrounded by the sea walls resembles the shape of a massive warship drifting across the sea. But the island's mysterious reputation goes far beyond its appearance. One of the strangest aspects of Hashima Island is how densely populated it was once. During the mid-20th century, thousands of people lived on this tiny upland. At its peak in the 1950s, the island housed more than 5,000 residents, making it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Family lived in tall apartment blocks stacked closely together. Schools, hospitals, shops, and entertainment facilities were all built within a very small space. Every part of the island had to be carefully designed because there were almost no extra land available. This extremely density created a unique open environment unlike anything found on the most islands. Life on Hashima Island revolved around the coal mining. Beneath the island lay the rich deposit of coal that fueled Japan's industrial expansion during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Miners traveled deep underground through the tunnel that stretched far below the ocean floor. Working conditions in these mines were often extremely difficult and dangerous. The tunnels were hot, humid, and poorly ventilated. Accidents and cave-in were constantly risked. Another disturbing part of this island history involved the forced labor during the World War II. Historical records show how some workers from Korea, China were brought to the island and forced to work in the time under the harsh conditions. This story adds a darker and more complex layer to the island's legacy. Yet perhaps the most mysterious of Hashima Island is what happened after mine closed. In the 1970s, the world began shifting away from coal as a primary energy source. Oil and other fuels replaced, and the coal mines beneath the island became less profitable. In 1974, the mining company officially shut down operation. Almost overnight, the island's entire population left. Family packed their belongings and moved back to the mainland during their many recruiting to the Nagasaki or other cities in Japan. Within weeks, the once crowded island became completely empty. Shops closed, schools shut their doors. Apartments that once held thousands of residents were suddenly silent. For decades afterward, the island remained abandoned because the buildings were exposed to the constant wind, salt water, and storms from the surrounding sea. They slowly began to decay. Windows sector, wall sector, and vegetation sectors started growing through the broken concrete. Um, For many years, the access to the island was strictly resisted because of the buildings were unstable and dangerous. The empty structures combined with the island's tragic history led to many ghost stories and urban legends. Some visitors describe the island as a feeling haunted, an entire city zone in time. Walking around its narrow corridor today, it is easy to imagine the sounds that once filled the island. Children playing, miners returning from work, family gathering in the small apartment. And now only the wind moves through the empty buildings. This strange contrast between the past life and present the silence is that what makes Hashima Island one of the most unusual islands in the world. It is not mysterious because of the hidden island wildlife or explored jungles, but it is important and powerful reminder of how quickly human civilization can rise and just as quickly disappear. Unlike many remote areas around the world, Hashima Island is not a famous rare for me or untouched ecosystem. What makes it this land remarkable is strange interaction between the nature and abundant human structures. Over time, the nature has slowly begun reclaiming the island, creating a fascinating and unusual environment where the wildlife, plants, and um, weather interact with a ghostly concrete city. A harsh artificial landscape, Hashima Island is located in the waters of the East China Sea, where the strong ocean winds and salty air constantly batter the island buildings. Unlike natural islands filled with forest or benches, Hashima is surrounded by massive seawalls, but to protect the island from a powerful waves and typhoons. The island's surface is mostly made of concrete and rock rather than soil. During this years, almost every square meter land was used for building roads and industrial facility. Because of this, there were very little natural ground where the plants or animals could live. This created a unusual landscape, an island that functioned well in the floating industrial cities than a natural ecosystem. However, today, decades after its abandonment, many spots of life have begun to return. When the island was completely abandoned in 1974, thousands of apartments, schools, and factories were left empty. At first, the island remained almost completely lifeless, but over the years, crackers in the concrete allow dust and soil to connect. The rainwater pool in the broken rooftop and the scattered cauldrot. This weedy area sitting a seed from the mainland gradually, small plants began to grow in unexpected places. Grasses bud through the cracks is in the pavement. Moss spread across the damp concrete walls. Hardy shrubs appear in the collapsed stairway and empty balconies. This plan created a tiny ecosystem within the rooms. Birds soon followed. The seabirds flying across the waters near the Nagasaki began landing on the abandoned buildings. The quiet island offered the perfect nesting size from the human distance. Today's Species such as guns and cormorants often rest along the island rooftops and broken sea walls. Their presence adds nuisance to a place that was once filled with only wind. Geographically, Hashima Island is very small, only about 16 inches in size. It lies just off the coast of the Japan, surrounded by deep waters that once hid the coal tunnels extending beneath the ocean floor. These underwater tunnels were one of the island's most remarkable geological features. Miners worked in the shafts and stretched more than 600 meters beneath the sea, extracting the coal from seams far below the seabed. Few mining operations in the world operated under such extreme conditions. Because of its location, the island is also constantly exposed to the world, to the powerful ocean weather system. Typhoons moving across the East China Sea frequently strike the island, bringing their intense winds and waves. Over time, these storms have accelerated the decay of the island building. Concrete walls crumble, metal railings rust, and entire sections of structures collapse under the pressure of wind and salt water. This ongoing process creates a ever-changing landscape of rules. What makes Hashima Island truly unique is that it represents an extremely rare type of environment, an abundant high-density solidity surrounded entirely by ocean. Most ghost towns are located on the land where the forest and animal can quickly reclaim them. Wood, but Kashima's isolated population concrete surface slow this happen gradually. Instead of being swallowed by the jungle, the island remains trapped in a strange balance between decay and survival. Plants grow only in their thin cracks, birds dominate the sky and rooftops, the sea surrounds everything. As the waves crash against the seawall, the stars break coast, the empty building, and slowly erode them year after year. Today, Hashima Island has become something like a living laboratory showing how the nature reclaims human structures. Scientists and historians sometimes visit the island to study how the weather, the salt, and the plant to affect abundant architecture. The island demonstrates how even the most industrial environment eventually return to nature, though the process may take decades or even centuries. Walking across the island today feels like stepping into a strange natural phenomenon. The silence of the is broken only by the wind, waves, and distant seabirds. The concrete towers rise like cliffs above the narrow streets. Plants cling to shelter balcony, and everywhere the ocean reminds visitors that this mysterious island, one of the prettiest places in Japan, is slowly transforming into something entirely new. The story of Hashima Island is not only about the abandoned buildings and silent streets. Behind the island's crumbling concrete walls lies a complex history filled with human struggle, uh, tragedy, and lingering mystery. Long before the island became known as a ghostly roll rising from the water near the Nagasaki Hashima was one a symbol of Japan's rapid industrial growth. In the early 19th century, fishermen traveling through the waters of the East China Sea reportedly noticed the black stone along the rocky shore of the small island. These stones were later identified as coal as a result that could soon transform the quiet island forever. During the late 18,000, as Japan rapidly industrialized, um, coal became an essential energy source. The powerful industrial company Mitsubishi portrayed the island in 1890 and began building the massive mining operation. What followed was an extraordinary energy ring project because the island itself was so small. Workers expanded it by constructing the last sewers and adding the reclaimed land. Multi-story concrete apartment building were built to house miners and their families. One of these buildings, completed in 1916, was one of the earliest reinforced the concrete apartment block in Japan. Soon, Hashima Island transformed into a densely packed industrial community. By the 1950s, the island had become one of the most crowded places on Earth. No more than 5,000 people live on a prize land barely large enough to walk across in a few minutes. Despite its harsh industrial purpose, the island has schools, hospitals, restaurants, movie theaters, and rooftop playgrounds for children. For many families like Hasima was surprisingly vibrant. The children can run through the narrow corridors between the siblings. Workers gather after long shifts in the mines. Lights from the apartment windows illuminated the island at night, making it appear like a floating city in the dark ocean. But beneath this lively surface, the coal mines carried constant dangers. Miners traveled through the elevators deep underground into the canal, extending the beneath the seabed. These tunnels are hot, crumble, and often filled with dangerous gases. Accidents sometimes occurred, and the difficult working conditions made life extremely demanding. Darker during the World War II, the island's history became even more complicated. Historical records indicate that the laborers from Korea and China were brought to be the island and fought to work in the coal miners during the extremely harsh conditions. Many of these workers endured the exhausting labor deep underground, often with little food and minimal safety protection. These stories remain an important and something painful part of the island's historical legacy. The sudden abandonment, perhaps the most mysterious event in this island story, occurred in the 1970s. A global energy industry shifted away from um, coal and toward the coal coal and toward oil, the mines beneath the Hashima Islands became less profitable. In 1974, the mining operation was officially closed. What happened next was astonishing. Within a matter of weeks, the island's entire population moved away. Families packed their belongings and relocated to the mainland. Schools shut down, businesses closed, and apartment buildings were left empty almost overnight. A place that once held thousands of people suddenly became silent because the evacuation happened so quickly. Many everyday objects were left behind. Desks in the classroom, dishes in the kitchens, and toys in abandoned rooms. Walking through the island decades later feels like entering a city frozen in time. After its abandonment, the island remained off limits for many years because of the unstable buildings. But during the period, the story and legends began spreading among the locals and visitors. Some fishermen claimed that they could see the faint lights flicker among the city building at the night. Others said that they heard the strange echoes carry with the wind and beneath between the towers. These tales gave the island a reputation as a haunted place. Although such stories are less likely, the rest of the imagination and the um, eerie atmosphere of the ruins they added to the island's mysterious reputation. In recent years, Hashima Island has attracted historians, filmmakers, and travelers fascinated by its dramatic past. The island even appeared in 2012 James Bond with Skyfall, where its airy skyline served as the setting for a villain secret hideout. Today, limited guided tours allow visitors to explore the certain safe areas of the island. Standing among the towering walls, it is easy to imagine the thousands of lives that once filled these buildings. Children once played on these rooftops, the miners once walked these corridors. Families once watched the sunset over the sea from these balconies. Now only the wind and waves remain. Hashima Island is not just an abandoned place, it is a powerful reminder of how quickly human history can rise, flourish, and disappear, leaving there behind only the silent structures and story waiting to remember. Around the world, there are many islands known for beaches, wildlife, and tropical beauty, but Hashima Island fascinates the scientists, historians, and adventurous travelers for an entirely different reason. Instead of untouched nature, the islands offer something far rarer, a frozen moment in the history. Rising from the water near the Nagasaki island stand as a dramatic reminder of how rapidly human civilization can build, transform, and abandon entire communities. For scientists and researchers, Hashima Island provides a remarkable opportunity to study how the nature slowly reclaims the human-built environments. Because the island was suddenly abandoned in 1974, most of its structures were left almost exactly as they were during its final days as a mining town. Over the decades, the wind, saltwater, storms, and vegetation have gradually altered the island's buildings. Researchers studying their environmental processes often find the island fascinating because it demonstrates how the natural forces break down the materials such as concrete, steel, and glass over time. The island is constantly exposed to the strong ocean winds from the East China Sea, along with the typhoons that sweep across the region. Salt from the sea slowly corrodes the metal structures, while the rainwater seep into the cracks in the building, weakening the concrete. These processes allow the scientists to observe how the coastal climates affect the abundant urban environments. Another reason scientists are interested in the island is the gradual return of life. During its mining years, nearly every surface on the island were covered by buildings, walkways, or industrial structures. There were very little soil or vegetation, but after decades, without the human activities, more ecosystems have begun forming in the walls. Plants grow in the broken stairways and rooftops, moss spreads along the dam waters, the dam walls, seabirds nest among the upper level of the abandoned buildings. This slow transformation offers the insight into how the ecosystem developed in the places that were once heavily altered by the humans. It is a rare example of the ecological recovery happening within an abandoned industrial city surrounded by the entirely by ocean. For historians and anthropologists, Hashima Island is an extraordinary cultural site. At its peak in 1950s, the island was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Thousands of people lived together in a compact, highly organized community built entirely for coal mining. Life on the island required carefully planning. Schools, hospitals, shops, and entertainment areas were all packed into a small area. Rooftops served as a playgrounds, gardens, and gathering places. Studying the island helps the researcher understand how people adapted to life in extremely dense urban environments. The island also preserved an important chapter of the industrial history in Japan. The coal mine beneath the island helped the power to Japan's factories, ships, and cities during its period of rapid modernization. Because of its historical significance, Hashima Island was included in the Port UNESCO World Heritage listing for Japan Meiji Industrial Revolution sites. For travelers visiting Hashima Island offer an experience unlike any typical destination. Instead of sandy beaches or tourist resorts, visitors encounter the towering rows of abandoned concrete buildings rising dramatically above the sea. Narrow the corridors lead through the empty apartment blocks, while broken the staircases climb toward the rooftops that once had played the playground and gardens. The island nicknamed Gantima, meaning the Battleship Island, become obvious when viewed from a boat approaching the sea walls. From a distance, the island looked like a massive warship built from concrete. Today, carefully guided tours allow visitors to walk along certain space sections of the island while learning about its history. Standing among the ruins may need travelers describe a powerful emotional experience. It is easy to imagine thousands of lives that once filled the land. The miner heading to work before the sunrise, the children playing on the rooftop, and family watching ships pass by in the distance. Ultimately, the fascination with Hashima Island goes beyond the curiosity about the abandoned buildings. The island tells a larger story about the human ambition, industrial progress, and the changing nature of the technology. For decades, the coal from the island fueled economical growth and supported thousands of families. Yet, when the world shifted to new energy sources, the island's entire purpose disappeared almost overnight. Today, the silent rules stand as a powerful reminder that even the busiest human settlements can become empty in a single generation. For scientists, historians, and travelers alike, Hashima Island reveals something profound about our planet. The landscape we create are temporary, but the stories they leave behind that continue to shape how we understand the strange and complex diversity of the Earth. Far out in the waters of the East China Sea, a dark silhouette slowly rises above the waves. At first, it looked almost unreal, like remains of the massive ship made entirely of concrete. As the boat approaches, the outline became clearer, towering gray buildings stand shoulder to shoulder, their broken windows staring silently toward the sea. This is Hashima Island. The wind moves constantly across the island, weaving through the narrow corridors and stair staircases. It whistles softly through the cracked walls and empty apartments that once held thousands of lives. Rusted railing creak the gentle as the ocean air passes over them. From a distance, the seabirds circle high above the rooftops. Occasionally, one lands on a crumbling balcony. It winks briefly, disturbing the quiet before it takes flight again. The sea never stops moving. Waves roll steadily toward the island, tall sea walls crashing against the concrete barriers with a deep echo that travels through the empty streets. The sound repeats again and again like a slow heartbeat surrounding the forgotten city. Along the rooftop, small parties or green have begun to appear. Thin glasses sway in the wind, growing from the cracks in the old pavement. Most clings to the damp corners of broken things, buildings, and spreading slowly across the surfaces once polished and clean. Nature moves patiently here. Step by step, the island changes. Walking along the narrow pathways feel like stepping into a frozen moment in time. The buildings still stand exactly where they were decades ago, but everything around them has shifted. Paint has faded, walls have fractured, and the windows have collapsed inward, leaving the dark openings that lead into the silent rooms. At sunset, the entire island turns the golden under the fading light. Long shadows stretch across the rooftops and broken air stairways. The empty structures glow briefly against the darkening sea, creating a scene that feels both beautiful and haunting. As night approaches, the island grows even quieter, only the wind remains. And from the water, the island state becomes clearer once again. It stands once and towering blocks resemble the outline of a massive battleship during their drifting through the darkness, a sight that inspired the in-island famous nickname. Yet beneath the silence, the island still carries the echoes of the past. The laughter children once filled these rooftops, the miners once walked these corridors before the dawn, and the families once watched the horizon from these balconies. Now the ocean surrounds it all, patiently whispering against the walls of a city that time has slowly claimed. Standing at a distance in the vast waters near the Nagasaki, the silent walls of the Hashima Island remind us of something both fascinating and humbling about our planet. Earth is a world filled with extraordinary places, some shaped by the powerful natural forces, others transformed by the human ambition. Hashima Island represents a rare combination of both. It is a place where the industrial history, human stories, and the slow return of nature have merged into a landscape unlike any other. From afar, the island still represents a giant warship drifting across the water of the East China Sea. This unusual appearance gave it the famous nickname Kungantima or Battleship Island. Yet behind the striking image lies a much deeper story. For decades, this tiny island was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Thousands of people lived there, building homes, rises families and working in the deep coal mines beneath the sea. Lights one shone from hundreds of apartment windows, and the sound of the daily life echoes between the tall buildings. Then, almost suddenly, everything changed as the world moved toward new energy sources. The coal that once gave the island its purpose was no longer needed. Within a short time, the mines closed and the residents departed, and the island was left behind. Today, the buildings remain, but the life that once filled them has vanished. This transformation makes the Hashima Island far more than an abandoned city. It has become a powerful symbol of how quickly the human civilization can rise and fall. Entire communities can appear in a generation and disappear just at a quick, leaving behind the silent structures that slowly fade under the wind and the rain. Yet the island also reveals something hopeful. Nature never truly stops. Even in a place covered almost entirely by the concrete, life finds a way to return. Small plants grow through the cracks in the pavement, birds circle in the empty rooftops, ocean winds reshape the landscape day by day, and over time the island is changing again. Scientists, historians, and travelers are drawn to places like Hashima not only because they are mysterious, but because they tell important stories about our world. They remind us that the history is not just written in books, it is carved into the landscape, buildings, and forgotten towns scattered across the planet. And Hashima Island is only one example. Across the Earth ocean lie countless islands with strange ecosystem, dramatic geological origins, or forgotten human history. Some islands remain isolated and unexplored, others hide the secret beneath the jungles, deserts, or volcanic rock. Each one holds a different chapter of our planet's story. These places remind us that even in an age of satellites and global travel, Earth still contains the countless wonders waiting to be discovered and understood. Some islands reveal the power of nature, others reveal the resilience of life, and some, like Hashima Island, quietly remind us that the world is always changing, leaving behind a mystery that continues to inspire curiosity for generations to come.